All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Academy of Animated Art. We have our live session today. It's Wednesday, so we're doing an Ask Me Anything. And today we have a very special guest. We have Miki Hansen with us.
Hello.
Miki, hi. So Miki is making the transition right now, currently in her career. She was working in animation and is now working in as a lighting artist for Insomniac Games. And what we are going to be talking to her about today is a couple things: her transition from working in animation and how she got started in games. She's going to be answering your questions. So if you have questions, go ahead and throw them in either in the chat window here in Zoom, or if you're on Facebook Live, just write a comment down below, and we will be happy to get to your questions there. But first off, Miki, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me here. It's an honor.
Well, the honor is all ours. So why don't we get started and just kind of figure out how you got interested in 3D and lighting and animation and the whole thing. How did you get on this path?
So that's kind of a long story, actually. So for most of my high school life, wanted to be a veterinarian. Like I was dead set on that. Even applied to a college and got into their biology program, a pretty esteemed one. And I was like, okay, like I can either go to this college and do like my biology major and be a veterinarian, or I can go to BYU, the university I went to, and go there and try out their animation program and maybe decide to do something else if I don't like it. So I just decided to do that, and I was like, well, BYU is the only school I got accepted to that has an animation program, so I'm like, I'll just give it a shot. And then I took a couple classes, the prerequisite classes, and found that I really loved it. Like I was in love with just basically the art of making everything look pretty. So I just rolled with it and kept going until I was like, well, I guess I'm declaring my major in this officially. And I never changed my major after that. So, and then since then, I never really looked back. It was probably like I still probably would have loved to do the veterinary stuff, but I think the thing I like the most about that I found that I like the most about biology and animals and all that were the nature documentaries and like the beautiful shots that were in the nature documentaries. So I'm like, well, if that's the thing that I liked the most, then maybe it's about the visual storytelling that I like more. So that's kind of how I ended up there.
That's so interesting. So did you practice art at all when you were in high school, or were you just like solely focused on the biology and the veterinary sciences?
I think, yeah, I definitely did draw and paint a lot in high school. I never got really good at it, but I tinked around with it and had some fun. I don't really know that there's much you can do, like in terms of veterinary stuff, like on your own free time, like you can with art. I did like volunteer at a wildlife rehabilitation center for a bit, but I found that I just wanted to go home and like work on my paintings and stuff after that. So I don't know.
That's great. So how did you, so when you were in school, did you know that, were you just interested in animation as a whole, or did you know that you wanted to do lighting from a pretty early point?
I didn't know for a long time. So the way that our program was set up is you have to sort of take a little bit of everything in the whole pipeline, just to get a feel for everything and understand. I mean, it helps a lot to be able to work with other people when you get in the industry to know what they're actually doing and what goes into their work. And so I took like all the different classes. They actually didn't even have a lighting class, but I thought for a long time I wanted to be a shading texturing artist. And I had a lot of fun with that, but I think the thing I found the most fun about it was the lighting at the end, at the presentation of the thing I shaded. And so in my senior year, I decided to switch from shading to lighting, even though no one in our year had really done that. So I'm like, well, I mean, like this is the part that I like the most, so I'm just gonna do it and hope it works. So
That's great. And then, okay, so then you finish up school, and so you got the apprentice lighting position at Disney. Was that directly after school, or was there more in between there?
So I graduated in 2018 and then had an entire, it was like very early in 2018, and had an entire year where I was completely unemployed. I
Right.
mean, I working like small freelance jobs with through a freelance company called Big Red Jelly, but it wasn't like animation related. It was graphic design, and so I was just like like applying to 5 to 6 places a day. Like I wasn't slacking off, but I guess it was just bad timing or something. I had gotten a couple interviews, but nothing ever that like solidly went through.
Mhm.
And then finally, like I had applied to the Disney Apprenticeship like early in that year, and hadn't heard back. So I'm like, well, I guess I didn't make it. And then whole year, like several months went by, and then like Christmas break, I get a call and they're like, hey, do you want to work on Frozen 2? And I'm like, what?
So I had a similar experience after college where I had some downtime before I got my first job. Can you describe, because I'm sure a lot of the people watching this may be in a similar situation. Can you describe like how you were able to endure it like a year long? Like what were you feeling during that time?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not a cakewalk, because it's kind of hard because you think like, all right, I'm pretty good, like, or my student reel is pretty good, so I feel like I should get, a job somewhere, like even if it's like a small startup somewhere or like freelance jobs, like in animation. And it was kind of hard because I wasn't getting any of that stuff, and I think it's because my reel was so, I guess, catered to film, like the film style. And so a lot of like game companies were like, oh yeah, it looks nice, but like we can't hire you because you aren't showing any like knowledge in game lighting or anything. And just stuff like that kept coming up, that I was like, I don't know if I'm like even employable anywhere. And I'm like, this is kind of my last hope, and that's not a good position to be in. And so, but I think the thing that kept me going is like, despite all the different like rejections I was getting, is that I was occasionally hearing back from recruiters saying like, listen, we don't have a thing open for you right now, but like contact us again later because we like the work that we're seeing. So like, even though we can't hire you right now, just like contact us in a few months. And so I knew I was like at least getting looked at, and I knew that recruiters like to see improvement in your reel over time. So I kept posting on LinkedIn and stuff and getting some visibility that way. And eventually, I guess it paid off. So it was kind of tough, but I guess just blind perseverance
Were
made it
you
work.
continuing? I know you had the freelance job, so you're probably busy with that. Were you continuing to build your reel? Were you continuing to make work during that time period?
Yeah, so my freelance job wasn't actually that time consuming, and I kind of kept it like that on purpose. I wanted to have time to just learn more stuff, really get good at like Houdini and ZBrush and stuff, so I could make more of my own projects and take them from start to finish. And I made a few things just in my own time that ended up going in my reel that I think actually really were like a big contributor to. I know it was at least a huge contributor to why I got hired at Insomniac. There was one thing that I did in my free time that really caught the recruiter's eye at Insomniac. And at Disney, I didn't get a chance to talk to the people who actually made the decision, but I think that a lot of the stuff that I added was visibly better than what I had in school. So I think just keep like continuing to work on it really helped.
For sure. Can you talk about, okay, so you get the call, it's over a year later to do the Disney Apprenticeship and to work on Frozen 2. When did you start? Was it immediately after, or was there some time period in between?
No, so that was winter break. So I think they had to start in February. Yeah.
Mhm.
So it was the beginning of February. So there was a couple months in between there.
Nice.
So.
So did you go through like a training protocol or like?
Yeah. So the Disney program is nice because I'm not sure, I can't remember if it's called the trainee program or the apprenticeship program. But anyway, they start you as a trainee.
Mhm.
And you start, you just do like learning their pipeline kind of exercises for 3 months or so. And then after 3 months, you go through a 3-month review, and they look through all the work that you did and decide if you're ready to actually work on real production work. And if you pass that, and thankfully all of us did, they and there were 8 of us, so that was kind of a big deal. But once you pass, you get to actually work on the production, whatever it is at the time. So for us, it happened to be Frozen 2, which was awesome because I love Frozen 1. So it was a lot of fun.
That's so cool. I mean, like, that had to be such a rush to I don't know, to just get in the door and just to like be in the review rooms and stuff. Like, what was your like biggest, I don't know, like what was the most exciting part of that process of working on that production for you?
Yeah, what you were saying, honestly, yeah, it was really cool to be able to see behind the scenes, I guess, of how they decided on, like, made artistic decisions, and how I got to be a part of, even like have a voice in that, especially with my own shots.
Mm-hmm.
It was really cool to meet Lisa Keen, who is like the lead concept painter, at least on Frozen. I'm not sure about the other productions, but she's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Her work is brilliant. And to be able to like take my shots in a like dark review room with like her and my supervisors and leads, and sometimes Jen and Chris, directors, and just like get these really like what people might think are super nitpicky notes, and they probably are, but like things that really bring the shot to life.
Mm-hmm.
And like really bring it that extra last 20% that I wouldn't have thought of, and like just learning from them was super cool. It was probably the coolest part about it.
So it seems like, I mean, it seems like you have this great opportunity at Disney. You're doing really well, and then you made the change to Insomniac, right?
Mm-hmm.
So talk about that process. Like, how did that decision making come about?
I'm not sure if it was actually like an active decision so much as just I was applying to anywhere that had a position open, and Insomniac was the one that picked me first.
Mm-hmm.
I had like a couple months in between the 2 jobs, and I wasn't in too much of a hurry to get a job after crunch time at Disney. I wanted a couple weeks at least to cool off a bit. But yeah, I started like just casually applying places, and Insomniac was the first that responded.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, I haven't done games before, but I know Insomniac has really cool games, and and my husband actually like grew up on a lot of their games and was really excited about it. He's like, you should totally interview with them. I'm like, okay, cool, I'll give it a shot. And when I got there, pre-pandemic, right? So like walking into the office, and everyone was super cool, like, and I just felt super at home in the like atmosphere there. So I'm like, yeah, I'll give this a shot. And then I started and ended up really loving it. So it's a big change, but it's a fun one. So
yeah, that's, I mean, even for me, like that sounds like so intimidating. You've mentioned a few life-changing moments in such casual tones during this conversation. It's like, it's something about you that's really interesting. You're like, yeah, no, like I was gonna be a veterinarian, but I just like decided not to do that anymore. And then like like you did, it was oh, like I switched from like textures and shading to lighting. I mean, no one's really ever done that, but like I just did it. And then like this, it's the same way. So this had to be a very intimidating process. How did you overcome, because like you said, you didn't have experience lighting in a game engine. Like, how did you approach that? Did you take that time leading up to the job to learn new things? How did you come about that?
yeah, I don't know. I think a lot of it just comes from the fact that I have gotten used to change a lot since school. I actually got to serve a mission with my church for a year and a half, and that was a huge change too. And you get to like lots of rapid fire stuff, like learn a new language and like learn how to interact with people or whatever. And then like after that, just realizing that like, I guess my mindset had changed from this is like the one thing I'm going to do for the rest of my life to this is just the first thing I'm going to try, and I'm just going to see how I like it. Is not my natural, like that's not my natural way of thinking, but I think after enough life changes and enough experience, for me, like all rapid fire at once, I'm just like, like it's just another thing to try. I'm sorry, I forgot the question.
No, it's okay. I have a follow-up. Where did you serve your mission at? Where were you?
Oh, I was in Brazil, so.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it
Oh,
was a lot of. I love the Brazilians. They're cool.
I was just saying, my question was just like, how did you handle this, both logistically, the transition, like just like the stress of having to learn a new thing and be productive at a job you haven't done before? Like, how did you learn to light in a game engine?
Yeah, so I played around a little bit in that like year that I had before going to Disney. I played around a little bit in Unity, but it wasn't like anything major. It was just like, I haven't learned Unity, so I'm gonna try it. And it didn't really go anywhere. I made like a fake level, like it doesn't have any like gameplay elements in it or anything, but it looks nice. And so I put that onto my reel as well. But yeah, I think just being open to the idea of learning new stuff, even though it makes me uncomfortable, was a big part of it too.
That's
so,
great.
Yeah.
So you've sat in on Disney rounds for Frozen 2. So you've seen how like a top level animation studio approaches a shot. How does a game studio approach lighting differently? And Insomniac's one of the best game companies in the world too. So like, what is there, like, how would you describe the difference in the aesthetic and the visual goals of lighting between the two types of projects?
So I think the biggest thing is the biggest like thing I had to wrap my mind around at first, and still am, is that in film you have like the 1920 by 1080 pixel screen that you're trying to make look beautiful, and you can take into Nuke and you can like cheat things out and whatever, right? But in games, the player can go anywhere they want, and they can look at anything they want, and they can spend as much time in any place they want. So making sure that everything from every angle looks good, and you can't really like cheat staged light sources, which is kind of a different way of thinking as well, because like if you just see a random spotlight on the character or on the ground and there's no actual light fixture there for it, then people will be like, oh, that's not realistic. And it's like, it's broken, it's a glitch. So thinking in terms of like, how can I cheat this to make it look like it's coming from the sun, even though it's totally not, but still look natural, and the player can go anywhere and it looks good from every angle. It's kind of a different leap, but it's like a fun visual puzzle in that way. Except for cinematics. Cinematics are kind of the same as film, except you don't comp, so it's all like in the engine.
Are the rounds set up? Is it similar? Like, do you have daily reviews?
No, actually, well, I'm not really sure, because the project that I'm on right now has only like 3 lighters on it. So it's a little bit different in terms of like when you have a huge organization like Disney with like 30 artists, or I think we had like 45 or something lighters working on Frozen 2, and then going to a place that only has 3 lighters. It was kind of a big shift, but they don't, at least on that project, I don't know about the other projects, but they didn't really have like a dailies or review session so much as they had like a weekly meeting where they just discuss, okay, what needs to be done, and then the art director will do paintovers whenever he gets to it. So it's kind of loose that way, and it's kind of nice, but I guess it's just a difference in culture and organization.
No, that's interesting. And have you found it? Have you found the transition pretty seamless, or have you found like road bumps in the way, or like how have you found that transition between the two mediums?
I mean, so there were like things that I didn't know that I probably should have known, like what a probe was, which is like a baked reflection map, basically. And I didn't know that that's what they were called, or that you had to do that. So I'm like, so they're like teaching me all these, like, this is how the engine works, and you click on this and you click on this and you add the probes there, and I'm like, what's a probe? And they're like, oh, okay, well, I'm glad you asked, and just like tell me, like catch me up to speed, basically, because I like, other than that small stint I had in Unity doing a small pet project, I like had 0 experience with games. So that was the nice thing, is like I was able to ask questions and not feel stupid. Because the team was super understanding and accommodating, and a lot of them also came from VFX or film, so they understood. But yeah, just a few things like that where I'm like, I probably should have known that, but you know, no time like the present to learn. So.
Oh yeah, I mean, I was at 0 knowledge. You said I've never heard that term before. So Totally good. All right, so now I want to hop over into some questions that we had, because this is an Ask Me Anything session. And as I said at the top, if you have more questions, make sure you throw them in our either in the Facebook Live or throw them in, if you're on Zoom, just in the little chat window, and I'll bring these up to Miki. So first question comes from Will Fenner, who was very excited. He said, "Ooh, I finally get to ask this."
Hi, Will.
Hi, Will. So how accessible actually is the transition from VFX animated films to a games pipeline? Is prior knowledge of industry standard engines like Unity or Unreal mandatory, or do they give you full training to deem you good enough to, and they just deemed you good enough to warrant it? And then another part, also, do you feel lighting for games allows for more creative freedom? I'm guessing it largely depends on the project you're working on. So let's start at the top. Did you have to have Unity or Unreal knowledge in order to get the job?
So yes and no. I think because I had worked at Disney, and they knew, like, they had seen my work in Frozen 2, it was a bit of an exception. So I knew Unity, like I was familiar with it, but I didn't like super know it, and I told them that, and they knew that. But I think for me, because I had worked at Disney before that, and they'd seen my work and they trusted my aesthetic eye, they were able to say, like, okay, well, she can learn on the job anyway, because Insomniac's engine is very proprietary. So everything they make is in-house. So even like knowing Unreal or Unity would definitely have helped a lot, but I would still have had to learn it anyway, like relearn their pipeline anyway. But it would definitely help for like normal, like anyone else, unless if you like come from like a big studio or have a really strong, like legit looking reel. It would definitely help to have experience in Unreal or Unity or some other game engine, like at another studio, just because it really helps them see, like, okay, they understand like how to learn this thing, and we can trust that they'll be able to pick up on it. So I think that's the biggest deciding factor. Oh, what was the second part again?
Oh, the second part. Yeah, sorry. I'll take this one at a time. The second part was just talking about, do you feel that you have more creative control lighting on a game engine versus lighting for a film?
I think that really does depend on the project. So I don't know, because the only experience I've had with film was Frozen 2, and that has a lot of stuff attached to it. Like it has to, go through lots of scrutiny, because they're going to make lots of toys and costumes based on it. So like, even if, for example, like there was one scene where I was lighting Anna in like a nighttime scene, and her cloak wouldn't look that bright purple, but I had to make it look like that because the directors say that it has to, because the toys are gonna, like, the toys have to match the characters. But with games, there's not as much of like that going on, so much as like it just has to look good and the characters have to look consistent enough. But yeah, I don't know. I think the answer is, I don't know, maybe kind of, but it depends.
Yeah, and the scrutiny of animated films are under a lot of scrutiny anyway, but a sequel to a super successful first film is under extra scrutiny, and there's like extra people and extra executives to check it out. So that might have been a unique situation there, but
yeah.
Okay, so let's see. Okay, so a question here from Sylvain. Actually, a few questions. So these are going to be a little bit more rapid fire, and these
Sure.
are all. He wants to know about your time as at Disney as a junior lighterist or the apprentice lighter position. So he wants to know about your roles at the studio. Do you just match a color key? Well, let's start there. For your lighting, did you get a color key and did you match to that?
At Disney, I often did. Usually Lisa Keene or someone else for a different show probably would paint a basic color key and for a whole sequence and say match it to this, and obviously you have to switch it up a little bit for your individual shot. but the basic colors and stuff should match. There was one sequence I got that I was able to do the keys for that there was no art for already, but that was kind of an outlier. At Insomniac, they don't, I mean, they do have keys that are painted by the concept artists, and it's like a place to start, but it's not nearly as like, it has to match this like Disney is. Because I guess it comes with having smaller teams. You can work directly with them, the concept artists and the art director, to be like, actually, this isn't really working like I thought it would. How about we add a little orange here? And then they'd be like, oh yeah, that looks great. Or no, that's terrible. And and you can sort of just like feel it out. So it's a little bit looser, at least at Insomniac. I don't know about other game studios because I haven't really had the experience there, but that's been my experience.
That's great. Okay, so a couple, again, these are like just rapid fire ones. Did you set up your own AOVs and render passes? And then, and did you optimize your own sample settings and handle your own render stuff? And then did you nuke it yourself? Did you composite it yourself, or did you pass the shots off to a compositor?
I'm assuming this is asking about Disney, right? Because compositing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Disney has their own proprietary like lighting setup. So yes, you kind of set up your own AOVs and passes, or you totally do, but it's like through their system. So it's not, it doesn't really have a comparison, I guess. It's kind of like Arnold and the similar, like you think through it the same way, but it's not the same tools. And yes, we do composite. So that's, I think Disney's, I can't think of any studios except for maybe Sony that the lighters don't do their compositing, but yeah, we got to do our compositing and that was fun, and Nuke as well.
That's great. And then I guess for either for gaming or film, do you ever do your own UV unwrapping and texturing?
No, that's for the environment team at Insomniac and the look team at Disney.
Congratulations on that. Okay, that's great. Okay, and then this is a Disney related question. Mm-hmm. How important were your eye specs or eye dings to a shot? Was that something that was brought up in rounds? And did you guys have like a strategy for that? Was there like a proper position for them or things like that?
Yeah, eye specs are super, super important. Like ridiculously important, especially when eyes are like half as big as their face. But yeah, generally the eye spec rule, they have their own like eye spec rigs, I guess, that you can add so that you can position them however works for each scene. But yeah, usually if you keep them between the pupil and the iris, or the iris and the sclera, and just sort of try to, they move their eyes around a lot, but if you try to like keep it there for most of the shots so that it has ultimate appeal, it's best. Mm-hmm. But yeah, they really get like, they scrutinize a lot on those eye specs. So, and they have a lot of characters, so it's really important.
Oh, for sure. Do you, and I always tell the students to try and put them in either like the 10 o'clock or 2 o'clock position, just kind of the upper right or upper left. Is that kind of your technique as well?
Yeah, I would think so. I never had like given that a term or thought about it, but like, I think I did usually end up putting it in those places. Yeah.
All right. Let's see. And then a specific one to your transition. Yeah. He was just wondering, so he said, what was the biggest challenge or change between animation and lighting for games? Was it the workflow or the way that you tackle a scene? Like, was there something about your workflow that changed in between the two processes?
Yes and no. For cinematics, not really, because I think cinematics are pretty much the same as lighting for film, except that you don't composite. Mm-hmm. And a lot of things rely on the effects team a lot more, I think. Well, I wouldn't say a lot more, because film has a ton of effects in it too. But I think like lighting and effects happen more congruently at the same time in games than maybe film does, because effects is supposed to come before lighting in a perfect world in film. But in terms of like level lighting, like when it's not a cinematic, like yeah, that was a huge workflow change for me. Broad strokes, went from like deciding where the key light goes to what the atmosphere looks like, how thick the fog is, you know, optimizing lights. So you have to choose between which lights cast shadows and which don't, because those can cost performance in milliseconds, and you want the game to run at 30 or 60 FPS. So just like having those things in mind as I'm doing it was kind of a shift from film.
That's so interesting. That's yeah, I guess that's a question, because I always think of render times as being this thing that ruins my day and like makes me wait overnight, but like you have to worry about it in real time. Like how much is that a hindrance to you to keep things in real time and at the 30 or 60 frames per second?
I think it really just depends on the level and what's going on in it. If there's a lot of crazy things going on, or if it's a really big level with like a lot of polys in it and a lot of complicated gameplay mechanics and stuff, it can get out of hand pretty fast. And because lighting is at the end, we usually get the brunt of having to figure out how to optimize things. But also the lights in general add like a lot of millisecond count to the performance, just because the bigger the light, they don't have area lights, by the way. So you have to like work with spotlights and kind of cheat it. So the bigger the spotlight, like the larger the attenuation, whether or not it's shadow casting, and if they intersect with each other, can add a lot of milliseconds really fast. So you just have to like keep playing the game and going into their the like developer side of it and checking all the numbers to make sure you're within millisecond budget. Which a different way of thinking, but I guess it's like that's the price you pay for getting to do stuff in real time, which is awesome. So
Great. So this was from Nicholas. He said he didn't miss the intro. So this was kind of talked about, but I just want to give you one more chance to mention this. So he asks, how difficult was it for you to get your initial job in lighting?
pretty difficult. So like in the beginning, I was saying like I had a whole year where I wasn't able to get a job, and I was applying to several places a day and trying to network like crazy. And I thought for a while, like maybe I'm just not employable right now. And so I was kind of in like a little bit of a worry. But I think it really just comes down to timing and making sure you're constantly improving and posting on LinkedIn and wherever else, like Instagram or wherever, ArtStation, and just make sure you keep getting your stuff out there and seen, and keep showing recruiters that you're not going stagnant, I think is a big deal.
Yeah, we've talked to recruiters a lot who really like seeing people progress and see that as a big thing. So seeing, that they've applied 6 months later and not just putting the same work on it over and over and over again, that it really, really matters to them.
I've heard that too.
Yeah. So Sarah wants to know, so she's asking about the transition from lighting the games, which you covered. And Sarah, don't worry, we've got this. We'll post a video of this later and on our YouTube channel. But she also asks, and I thought this was an interesting one. Do you like playing video games, and does it affect your enjoyment of your job?
Yes, absolutely. I love playing video games. And I haven't really had the chance to play a lot since I started school, basically, because I was busy working my butt off. But like in high school, I would always go over to my friend's house and play Oblivion and Skyrim and stuff. Assassin's Creed, I think, was another one. And I'm trying to think. My husband really likes Mass Effect, so he got me into that lately too. But yeah, basically, I really love the world building aspect of the games, and I think that's the part that I enjoyed exploring the most when I was playing games. I like the story too, but I'm really mostly there for the visuals. So it's fun to get to be a part of that now.
That's so cool. So has your perception of video games changed since you started working on them?
Yes and no. I mean, I think my perception of entertainment as a whole changed once I got into animation, and I knew what it was like to see things unfinished and pulled apart and changed last minute and all that. So it's kind of the same deal in video games, where you see like the good, the bad, and the ugly all behind the scenes, but like how it ultimately comes together makes this beautiful thing in the end. So Kind of, not really. I mean, I have more respect for them because I see all the work that goes into gameplay stuff that I have no idea how they do it or what any of it means, but I'm amazed by it. So
That's great. That's great. All right. Well, I want to finish out with one more question, which is, if there's anybody, I guess if you were going to go travel back in time, like 6 months or so from when you were just starting to make this transition, or your approach with somebody who walked up to you and said, "Hey, I'm either just getting started in this industry and I'm thinking of making the transition to games," like what advice would you give them about making the transition? What's like the one piece of advice that you would say?
work hard, don't stop networking. Keep trying, even though you might not hear back from studios you apply to for like a year or more. And I guess just keep improving in any way you can. Specialize if you're going to go to a big studio, and be a generalist if you're going to go to a smaller studio. I guess um, I I get a lot, like I hear a lot of questions from people who say like should I pick like one thing or should I do like three things, like should I do lighting and shading or whatever? And I had that question too in school. But if you can just like get your foot in the door by getting really good at your one thing, that's probably going to be your best bet in my experience. I'm sure other people have done it differently, but yeah, I mean, don't give up, I guess, is kind of the takeaway.
That's great. Yeah, don't give up. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. As I say at the end of these, I don't know how to end these without actually hanging up on you. So I'll give you my genuine goodbye now. Miki, it's been a real pleasure talking to you. Your story's been very inspirational, and you are incredibly driven, and you've been able to overcome a lot of things on your path to this job. And it's really cool to hear it and to hear you so nonchalantly talk about overcoming very difficult things on your way to this. It's been very inspirational to talk to you. So thank you for taking the time to talk to us. And if anybody has any other questions for Miki, if you're watching this on recording, throw them in the comments. I haven't asked her this. This is another thing that I do live. I'll reach out to you and make sure to get your guys' questions answered there.
I'd be happy to answer any, yeah.
All right.
Well,
Thank you so much again for joining us.
thank you.
All right. Have a good night, everybody. Take care.
Bye.